Hi, I'm Paul from Dirt Rider Down Under magazine. We're here at a private test track in Taupo in the middle of the North Island with 5 of the latest fuel-injected enduro weapons on the market today. We're going to spend the day putting them through their paces. Tomorrow we're off to one of the biggest trail rides in the country where we'll go and do some serious Ks. So let's go and see which is best. So how do we test 5 enduro bikes? Well, to start with, we've got some of the best riders in New Zealand here to put them through their paces. We've also got a couple of guys who are just average trail riders, so we can see which bikes are meant for racers and which bikes are meant for the majority of us out there. We're going to be a bit analytical about it. We've got check sheets with scores from 1 to 10, so all the guys can go through each different part of the bike and vote which they think's good and which they think's bad. So who are the contenders? Well, first up, here's Suzuki's RMX450Z. Based around the fantastic RMZ450 motocrosser, it was one of the first Japanese fuel-injected enduro bikes on the market. It's also the cheapest at $13,300, but it's also got the smallest tank at 6.2 litres, so whether that's going to be a thorn in its side, we don't know. The Suzuki RMX450Z won our last 450 enduro group test a couple of years back. The difference between now and then? We didn't have the new Yamaha WR or the KTM 450 EXC. Powered by the same fuel-injected motor that's in the stunning RMZ motocrossers, the RMX power plant was never going to be in doubt. With a remap for more mid-range, the Suzuki has the most aggressive power delivery of this bunch, with a double overhead cam motor and open exhaust pipe encouraging the rider to get on the gas hard and early out of the turns. The cockpit's comprehensive, with Renthal bars sitting in front of the digital enduro computer. The frame is an aluminium bilateral beam item, again straight from the motocrosser, and the RMX loves to turn because of it, while the suspension too feels like it's more designed for motocross jumps than heading into the bush. One item that is unique to the Suzuki is the aluminium tank, which looks trick and is there for a firm seal with the electronic fuel pump. The only downside is the small capacity, with only 6.2 litres fitting inside, which should see around 70 to 80 kilometres covered before the fuel light comes on. At 125 kilos ready to ride, the Suzuki isn't the heaviest of this bunch, but isn't far off. But you'll feel better about that when you buy one, as it's also the cheapest of the lot. Next up, something a little bit different. From Sweden, the Husaberg FE450. Part KTM, but also part their own creation. It's got special touches like this 70-degree motor that's virtually laid flat in the chassis. The idea being, it keeps the weight nice and low and also centralised in the bike, but we shall see. The FE450 is different from the others for a number of reasons, but that doesn't mean it's not in the running for the top spot. In the last group test, a number of the testers that race really rated the blue and yellow machine, the low centre of gravity due to the motor being canted forward 70 degrees, really making a difference to the handling. The motor itself isn't out of the ordinary, other than being tipped forward, with a single-cylinder 4-stroke wrapped up in a chromoly frame, much like the KTM. As the bikes come out of the same factory, that's hardly surprising, and you soon notice the hydraulic clutch, clocks and many other components that are straight off the orange machine. The fuel tank too is slung low, again to keep weight down, meaning the airbox is up under the headstock and the fuel's under the saddle. That does mean a slightly fatter mid-drift, but is that much of a price to pay for what is undoubtedly the fastest steering bike in this test? The only negative is that this is the final year of this model, with the 2013 Husabergs now announced as just being simply rebadged KTMs. So does that mean the FE450 will soon become collectible? Or maybe it's going to be a dinosaur? Next up, KTM's 450 EXC. KTM are synonymous for making fantastic enduro bikes, and the fuel-injected 450 EXC has to be one of the best. but how's it going to compete against this extremely tough competition? This is the machine that the testers were expecting to be the bike to beat. From the saddle, and the 450 EXC is nice and narrow in the middle, allowing the rider good grip of the machine. The equipment is all top shelf, with Brembo supplying the brakes and WP supplying the suspension. The clocks are the same that graces the entire KTM off-road range, with a simple yet effective system telling you all you need to know. The chassis isn't the usual stiff alloy affair that the Japanese firms have gone for, with the EXC motor cradled in a chromoly steel frame, which makes the bike slightly more forgiving in the rough stuff. A firm favourite though was the hydraulic clutch, making all day riding a breeze with a nice light action that also doesn't require any adjusting. Powering the EXC is a fuel-injected 450cc single-cylinder power plant, which is coupled to a 6-speed gearbox and fed fuel from the biggest tank in the test, with the 9.5 litres offering plenty of distance. Combine this with the lowest tested wet weight of 119 kilos, and the KTM looks to have all the boxes ticked. Finally, Yamaha have decided to join the fuel-injected 450 enduro bike party, but have they done enough to take the crown? It looks fantastic, but it has got a small tank, and it's also the priciest of the bunch. Yamaha virtually invented this class, so it's hardly surprising their entry into the segment looks to be a firm contender for overall glory. The power plant's the same item that's powered their carburetted WR450 for a number of years, but with the addition of fuel injection, a new aluminium frame straight from their YZ250 motocrosser, new styling, and the suspension from their YZ450. It looks like Yamaha have picked the best from the rest to make the WR a serious piece of kit in the bush. The only other thing that hasn't changed is the enduro computer, which isn't a problem as the old WR had one of the best in the segment anyway. And with a wet weight of 119.5 kilos, the new version of the legendary WR is virtually the lightest as well. But it seems Yamaha did miss a couple of tricks, with the fuel tank only holding 7.2 litres and the gearbox only sporting 5 cogs. For a bike that's sold as being a great road legal adventure bike, that doesn't give the WR the range of the KTM. And something a bit different, we've got Husqvarna's TE449. Now Husqvarna have been mixed up with BMW for a couple of years now. This 450 fuel-injected dirt bike is certainly a bit different to the others. First up, the front sprocket shares the same point with a swing-arm pivot, meaning that when the back wheel goes up and down, it doesn't tighten or loosen the chain. Also, the crankshaft goes backwards. Does it make a difference? We're going to find out. Another bike that likes to do things differently, the Husqvarna TE449 is the most adventure-based bike of the lot. Heck, there's even a key to turn to get the thing going. Powered by the motor from BMW's G450X enduro bike, the Husky has taken many of the technological cues from the German machine, and the fuel tank is again mounted under the saddle. That does give an uncharacteristically long saddle for the rider to get used to, as well as a slightly wide feeling in the middle. The BMW motor has a massive bottom end power, which combined with a coaxial system seems to make the Husky find traction where others are struggling. And there's also the benefit of the hydraulic clutch. The tank is a healthy 8.5 litres, and the carb suspension includes an inverted rear shock that gives a progressive feel while offering the same ground clearance benefits as PDS. The Husqvarna is certainly a wild card in this test, but with the BMW financing and technology behind them, it could certainly be the winner of this test. Here we are, day 2 of the 450 Enduro group test. We've come to Epic Events Trailblazer, which is one of the best trail rides in the country. we've got all 5 bikes about to turn up, refueled, we're going to weigh them, wet as well, and then we're going to go out, do as many Ks as we possibly can, and test these bikes in the environment that they're going to be used in. So we spent the day here in Taupo at Epic Events Trailblazer Trail Ride with 700 other riders. We've had a 40k loop, 10k loop, 5 bikes, 5 riders, and we've come to a conclusion of which we think is the best 450 enduro bike of the bunch. And it's this, KTM's 2012 450 EXC. Why do we think it's so good? Well, it just seemed to appeal to everybody who rode it. Whether they're intermediate, expert, pro, racer, everybody just seemed to get on with the KTM 450 EXC. The motor's got usable power, it has power everywhere, there's no lumps and bumps. The suspension works, it turns, the brakes works. It just does everything easy, and it's just a bike to ride fast. KTMs are renowned for producing great enduro machines, and this 450 EXC is a perfect example of just that. Okay, so the KTM won. But so what came second, third, fourth or fifth? Well, that hasn't been quite so easy. Some guys think the Husaberg FE450 is the bike because they think it's a great race bike, good for going real quick in the forest. Me personally, I loved Yamaha's new WR450. It's easy, it looks fantastic, fuel injected, push button, just a great bike that I found could turn really well, I could ride at my speed, and it just did everything great. Suzuki's RMX, it's cheap, it's the cheapest of the lot. The guys were saying if you're coming from a motocross bike to an enduro bike, the RMX would be the one. Unfortunately, Husqvarna's 449 did get put to the bottom of the pile, but that's not to say it's a bad bike. Really, all of these bikes are absolutely superb, and you couldn't go wrong with buying any of them. It just depends what you want to do, how you ride, and really which dealer's closest to your house as to which bike of this bunch you pick.